But once you get into that mindset of you don't have to like it, you just have to do it, it is liberating. It does free you up.
And people can feel when you're genuinely curious, and people can feel when you're checking a box. This is a way that you know that you're using the right tools, is when you see them in more than one place.
Welcome to Building Your Sales Engine. I'm your host, Mark McGraw. Hey friends, Mark here. Welcome back to Building Your Sales Engine. Hey, we have today Mr. Glen Carey, good friend of mine, wonderful Sandler practitioner in terms of implementing Sandler. We're going to hear some stories about how he sees Sandler in real life and some Sandler rules. I think you get a good kick out of this, as well as seeing how you can reinforce the principles. Hey, don't forget to subscribe so that you get notifications when we have new podcasts and new shows that come out. And as always, if you want to get the show notes and if you want to get some cheat sheets of what's going on, go to buildingyoursalesengine.com. Let's dive in with our conversation with Glen. Hello, everyone. Mark here. Welcome to Building Your Sales Engine. I am excited, as I always am, but particularly today because I have got Glen Carey with me right over here. And Glen has been a client and a friend, and I really do mean a friend. We have laughed a ton over the years. And today, we're going to talk about applying Sandler and Sandler rules in real life. And we were chatting the other day about all these different circumstances that we run into Sandler and how we can apply them and how it makes us stronger as a seller. Glen, welcome so much, and looking forward to the conversation with you, my friend.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me. First time, long time. This is exciting. But yeah,
Long time listener, first time caller.
Exactly. And I'll ask a complicated question and take my answer off the air. Thanks very much. But yeah, no, this is great. And congratulations on the podcast. I think this is a fabulous way to really start getting the message out, as people are either folding socks or walking dogs or whatever other activity. This is probably the only appropriate type of multitasking.
That's exactly right. We've had fun with it. We really have had a blast. It's been great to connect with people and to kind of bring them in and get their insights. And I'm looking forward to this one. We're going to talk about how you can apply Sandler and Sandler rules in your personal life. And a listener might say to themselves, well, why does that matter for me for building my sales engine, my sales process? Well, the fact is that when you can apply Sandler principles and you can apply them, well, why am I answering the question? Why don't you answer the question? Glen, start off, tell everybody, first off, a little bit about you, and then let's talk about why you would want to think about Sandler in your personal life.
Yeah. So again, thanks for having me. So I've been I think you and I got introduced probably about 12, 13 years ago. Yeah. In the Paleolithic era. And I had already been in sales for probably about 10 years before I encountered Sandler and you in particular. And it really changed the way that I sold. It changed the results that I got. And that's largely because not only is it a great system, but I really think it's grounded in some really important universal truths, which is why this is kind of a fun, evergreen session or whatever, because the stuff bubbles up in real life all the time. And once you start to notice it, you see it's kind of everywhere. And I just think that this is a way that you know that you're using the right tools, is when you see them in more than one place. So, we had some fun stories that we were going to tell, where, Sandler rules aren't just rules or tactics that you implement. It's that they illustrate or support something about human behavior that
and you start to see it in real life, day in and day out. You see it with your kids. You see it. I mean, I've applied it. We'll see if we talk about it, but I applied it to lose a bunch of weight at one time. Now, that seems crazy. How in the world can that be? Well, maybe we'll unpack that story.
Yeah.
You were talking about, one of the rules is you don't have to like it. You just have to do it.
Yeah.
And let's start there with that rule and sort of your background on that one.
Yeah. So, I mean, you don't have to like it. You just have to do it is so important, because there's an element, everybody, most people like to present. Everybody likes to close a deal, but there's a whole lot in there that has to happen before those sorts of things happen. And I was listening to another podcast. It was actually an
You were
interview.
cheating on us, Glenn?
I
Sorry.
sadly I have appetites beyond just building my sales engine. And it was with Arthur C. Brooks, who's at Harvard nowadays. And he was kind of making this comparison between sort of the baby boomers. The baby boomers were, if it feels good, do it. And in the younger generation that he observes these days is if it feels bad, stop it.
Hmm.
So anything that doesn't feel fun and good right now, we have to sort of like figure out a way to stop doing it or figure out a smarter way so it doesn't feel bad or whatever. But like, let's just take prospecting, cold calling, whatever it is. It's actually kind of liberating to say, I'm not going to enjoy this, but these are the necessary steps I've got to make. 3 calls a day, 3 calls a week, whatever that is. If you just do it, it's
Hmm.
it's really, really valuable, and over a sustained period of time, it will yield results. And what made me laugh was, um, I'm not a huge Taylor Swift fan, but the line in the song was lights, camera, smile, blank. Just do it. Just
Just do
get
it.
it done. And it's one of those things where we spend so much time avoiding it. If we just made the 3 calls or sent the 5 emails, we'd be over and done, and we'd be moving on to the next thing. But try as we might, people don't magically show up at our door and say, "May I please give you money for a long-term deal?"
Wouldn't that be nice?
It
And
would
the
change the
original
dynamics.
rule is you don't have to like prospecting, you just have to do it. And to your point, I think, and I love the word liberating. I think what you said was really smart, Glenn, in that the fact is that we want to try to get to the point where we enjoy something, but you know what? You might not ever get there. Maybe you'll get there eventually, but you got to do it so many times that you're gonna slog through there. But it is very liberating to say, I might not like prospecting. I might not like asking for referrals. I might not like I know for me, I'll use this personally, very, very true. I did lose 40, 50 pounds using Sandler principles, as crazy as that sounds. But one of the things
Congratulations.
is I don't have to like exercise. I just have to do it. At
Mhm.
the time, I hated sweet potatoes. And I would say to myself as a mantra, because I knew they were good for me and I hated them. Okay. I don't have to like sweet potatoes. I just have to eat them because food is fuel. And so you get these mantras inside of you. And that was one that I used all the time is you don't have to like it. You just have to do it. And it helped me personally. And so you've seen the same thing, it sounds.
Yeah, I mean, what I've always found, oops, as I smack this, sorry. What I've always found is that any technique, any regimen, you can't rely on motivation or Herculean effort. It can't be once more into the breach, dear friends. It's got to be something that is sustainable. And if you don't, if it's such a fight, you won't continue. It won't work. But part of that fight is just, well, I don't like it. Well, sometimes it's just okay.
Yeah.
You don't have to like it. You just have to do it. And just knowing that you're putting in the work actually makes that work a little bit lighter because we're not going for emotional gratification in this process, but it is part of the process. Um, so yeah, I've found it really helpful and allowed me to sustain outreach when I don't feel like it. Because if you rely purely on motivation or inspiration, you'll be sitting there in the third quarter going, "Oh my God, I've got one deal to close the rest of the year. Like this is no good."
That mindset, it frees up. You said, here's another word that comes to my mind, and that is resistance.
Hmm.
Resistance is that feeling that you feel that prevents you from doing something. And that resistance, once you start to recognize that really my feelings are not relevant to this moment, my actions are very relevant for me being successful. So just because I don't like it is not really relevant. And I think it is liberating to just acknowledge that. And I'll go back to my food thing. I'm not going to love every meal that I have.
Mhm.
At a certain point in my life, every meal I had to be this phenomenal, like it was my last supper. Well, there's a calorie count cost to that. But once you get into that mindset of you don't have to like it, you just have to do it, it is liberating. It does free you up. And I think that helps us personally to get the adrenaline going to just do the freaking work.
Right. Because the longer you spend getting ready to sell, getting ready to prospect, getting your desk organized, go getting a cup of coffee, you end up with 27 things that you've done other than the thing you need to do. And that's how a bad morning turns into a bad day turns into a bad week, and all of a sudden it pinballs, and you suddenly realize, you know, there's a meme that runs around Instagram or TikTok or whatever, but it's somebody with a light switch that they've changed the cover on or whatever it was, and so it's been putting this off for 6 months. Took me 12 minutes.
Yes.
Like you just get it done.
I will learn nothing from this, I think is the last line that she uses. It is a great line. I spent 6 hours procrastinating of something that took me 4 minutes to do. I will learn nothing from this.
Yes, absolutely.
It is a Have you ever read the book, The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield?
I have not. No, tell me more.
It is a great read. Stephen Pressfield is an author, and he's written a lot of fiction, and I think nonfiction biography, history kind of stuff. So he's an author, but he's most famous to me for a couple of books that he wrote, which I would really recommend to anybody. But one of the books is called The War of Art, not the art of war, but the War of Art. And what he talks about is that people that are in the artist community, whether they're painting or whether they're writing a book, they have to go to work.
Hmm.
And going to work sometimes is hard. And so back to the you don't have to like it, you just have to do it. What he talks about is that pros turn pro. A pro, once they decide they're going to be a professional and they're going to earn a living at painting, they turn pro, which
Hmm.
is another book that he's written. And what that means is that your feelings about the creativity and all the wonderful stuff of I'm creating genius and all these things is really secondary to I'm planting my fanny in this chair for 4 hours and I'm going to work at 8 a.m. They
Hmm.
turn pro. And I think a lot of salespeople, it's just a great lesson. I
Yeah.
think it highlights what you're bringing up.
Yeah. Um, I think what we occasionally overlook or allow ourselves to indulge in too deeply is the idea of I've got to be enjoying this. You know,
Mm.
sometimes it's manifested in dream jobs, which are when you finally break them down, really are just dreams. Like there is no job that is that good all the time. But the other thing that I wanted to, which I thought would be fun to talk about on this conversation was it was actually in the last, so shout out to Josh and the last podcast, but he put sort of ellipses on one of the statements, which was, um, you know, uh, whatever the Sandler rule is, if your heart's in the right place, like if you're asking out of genuine interest, if you're trying to understand, if there's actual curiosity in your questions, in your qualification, you'll yield much better results than if you treat this as some sort of a checklist that has to be plowed through and um, and and simply getting to the end will yield some sort of result. I think that's when people get good at sales is because there is a genuine curiosity.
Yeah, and I'm not sure this is a Sandler rule, but it's certainly something I've said a lot, and that is motive matters. So if you're calling on someone and you're asking, let's say you're using a negative reverse, but you're doing it because you just learned it in Sandler and you're like, I can't wait to use this technique. I don't know how many times, especially early on in learning Sandler, I would hear somebody say something and I'm like, oh, that's brilliant. I can't wait to be on a sales call and use it. And inevitably, I would use it at an inappropriate time. It's like,
Right.
it's just, and that's part of the, you got to learn to fail to win Sandler rule.
Hmm.
But your intentions make a difference when you have these conversations.
And people can feel when you're genuinely curious, and people can feel when you're checking a box. It's a matter of, are you invested in the conversation with the hope of learning something, or are you simply trying to get to minute 58 so you can say, well, thanks very much, when should we meet again? And the person's looking at you like, no, not really. I mean, those questions. So one of the things I encountered this in real life. It was kind of funny. This was 10, 12, many years ago. This was pre-iPhone. It was so long ago. Um, and I was headed to a meeting, small broker somewhere in Florida, and I knew that it was exit something or other off of 95. And I got lost, and I'm starting to run late. It's hot, getting aggravated, and I pull into a gas station, and I go in and I go to the guy at the counter, and I'm like, how do I get to 95? And he looks at me and he goes, well, where are you trying to get to? And I was so annoyed and so hot. And all I could think of is, what business is it of yours where I need to go? I asked you about 95, and I'm making up the city, but I need to get to Tampa for a meeting, is what I finally said. And he said, oh, well, if you're trying to get to Tampa, 95 is completely out of your way at this point. Go take this road and you'll be there in 20 minutes. And I'm sure all the Floridians on the call are like, Glen's geography of Florida is completely screwed up at this point. But the point was, he didn't just tell me how to get to 95, which was the question I asked. He said, where are you trying to go? Because he immediately recognized, you ain't nowhere near 95, my friend. So let's figure out what you actually need done. And so many, I used to do this all the time. Person said, what colors does it come in? It comes in red, blue, and green. It took me years to finally say, that's interesting. Why is color important to you? Do you have a favorite color? What was the color of the last one? All these sorts of things. But if you just simply bounce back and volley back the question with the answer, you're no closer to understanding that client than you were before they asked the question. And I laugh about that one all the time.
It's such a good example. And by the way, kudos to the guy for recognizing the moment and taking enough of an interest, because I think that really, it really ties to it. The Sandler rule might be, and there's only 249, right? So, and I make them up as I go. Let's be honest.
56% of all statistics are made up on the spot, Mark.
That's exactly right. And so, the Sandler rule for that might be, the problem that the prospect brings you is never the real problem.
Right.
And so your real problem was not, how do I get to 95? Your real problem was, how do I get to Tampa? And those are two different things. And I think a lot of times, when we look at those situations and we apply those situations outside of our selling world, we start to recognize, and I encourage people to practice Sandler concepts in their personal lives.
Yep.
When you do that, man, you just get stronger. You recognize things, and you're able to see things that you wouldn't normally see.
Yeah, and I would also think about myself as the buyer or the prospect in that situation, where the initial response was, what do you care where I'm trying to go? So I was as the asker of the question, I was a little frustrated when I first heard it. So if you reverse somebody, if you
Which is
ask
ironic,
that,
because you were the one that was lost, not him.
right, but I'm like, I know this one thing. Please tell me the answer to this one thing. But the question I was asking was not actually going to help me solve my problem. So yeah, kudos, greatest AMP clerk of all time. He was probably the owner.
And again, maybe another rule inside of there: be curious, skeptical, and unattached to the outcome. I think that's back to the motivation piece. If we really are sincere about understanding someone's position, rather than always trying to be selling, okay, then we're in such a better position. And actually, I just find it's easier to sell when I'm trying to qualify than it is when I'm trying to sell.
Oh yeah, yeah. What's the rule? People love to buy, they hate to be sold. And
Mhm.
what you're competing with is all the bad salesmen and saleswomen who have come before. And you genuinely have to differentiate yourself by simply not driving towards the sale all the time.
Yeah.
Um, this helped me. I mean, this isn't necessarily a real life story, but or a anecdote, but the single biggest problem I had before I met you and met Sandler was I had no ability to disqualify. I was just a friend making machine. And if somebody was nice to me, then gosh, they're going to buy. I just know it. And I probably annoyed the heck out of a whole lot of people with a whole lot of follow up of, you know, never really assessing, did what I sell actually solve a problem for them, reduce pain, any of those sorts of stuff. But now, you know, what's our second favorite word is no, our first favorite is yes. But, you know, getting a no early is just a tremendously pleasant thing, because if you approach it from the perspective of this may work, this may not work, but we're going to figure it out together, you have a very different approach. And it's a collaborative human approach as opposed to, I'm going to somehow try and trick you into doing this thing that you're not predisposed to do. It changed everything for me uh, in terms of not needing this thing to lead to a contract, this conversation, this exchange, this proposal, whatever.
And back to the intention, it's one thing to say those words.
Hmm.
Let's say we're not right for everybody. We may not be right for you. It's
Yeah.
one thing to say that. It's another thing to mean it. Now, I will say that sometimes you've got to say it 10, 12, 15 times and maybe not mean it fully. It just doesn't have quite the impact, as when you say it and really, really, truly mean it.
Yeah. And sometimes you have to say it to yourself because there is a portion of that deal, of that opportunity where maybe you are 60% right. But what what true qualification helps you to do is say that 40% is going to be a hot mess. And I know we can do the 60, but the 40 that they need that I'm sort of downplaying in this conversation, it's coming back. It's coming back to bite. It's going to bite hard. And then they're going to be like, you said you could do this. And you really have very little credibility at that point. It's far better to say, if you're only interested in the 60%, I can definitely help you. But for this other stuff, we're just not going to be a good fit for you. And I'd rather, I mean, this was practically a cliche of mine, but I'm too sensitive to have people out there hating me. I'd rather part
Yeah.
friends now and rather than a year
And you
from now.
build credibility with that, and you're genuine about it.
Yeah.
As well. Glenn, I'm reminded by a client of mine, Paul Ripa. I'll even give the name. Um, I'm doing a session. We were all live in person, and Paul from the back of the room, 30 people or whatever in the room, and he yells out, "Sandler ruined my life." I'm like, "Oh boy,"
Oh
you
boy.
know. And so I bite because I knew him well enough, and I knew he was a big fan. And what he told me actually helped transform, how I look at. But here's what he said. He said, all day long, salespeople are calling on me, and he said, what I do is I see them, and I'm like, that is not the right way to do it. Now that I know Sandler,
Hmm.
what they're doing is not the right way. And it frustrates me because all day long I meet 5 people, let's say through the course of the day that are selling me or trying to sell me. And I'm just constantly. So first off, those are great referrals. Thank you. Um, Secondly, the other thing that I brought up to him and that I've used in my life, everybody can use this, and that is it's reinforcement. Every time you see someone in sales doing something that is not the best path because you've learned and implemented Sandler, that should be great reinforcement to ask yourself, am I doing that now?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. And
it's been a great lesson. Thank you, Paul.
way to go, Paul. We
Way to
appreciate
go, Paul.
Uh, yeah, the other thing that you talk about real life. I mean, you talk about weight loss. You talk about staying in shape. All of this stuff is about the constant application of the system and the reinforcement of the system. And I've learned new sales techniques since I work directly with you, and they're good as well. The ability to fall off the wagon is just stunning. The ability to go, oh my God, I rolled in there with my plaid sport coat and I spilled all my candy in the lobby, and I stepped on every rake in the room. I'd fire me. Like, what was that? And it just, you're like, I just fell back on all the old stupid habits that we have. So I mean, there is not a day that goes by where I'm not trying to remind myself, like, there is no perfecting of this system. There is the reinforced application of the system, because I guarantee you forgot it in the last 48 hours. It's
It
crazy.
it is I mean, I don't know what would happen if I wasn't coaching and training it and applying it for that matter day in and day out. It's so easy. We say all the time, "It works so well, I stopped doing it." And it's so true. It's so true. How many things a friend of mine, Karen Miracle, made a comment. She goes, she's also a Sandler coach and a trainer, and she said, the longer I'm in the business, the more I realize I'm more in the reminding business than I am in the sales training business. And I think
Mhm.
she's right. And that has tremendous value for people too. So, there's a lot of things in life that's worked so well, we've stopped doing them.
Well, I mean, and you look at any pro, a violinist still does warm up exercises and scales. It's spring training right now. Those guys are still doing the same stretches they've been doing since they were 9 years old. Like, they keep doing the fundamentals, and there's just this overwhelming desire to go, all right, I got it. I can move on now. I don't have to do the reinforcing. And
I got
I,
the merit badge.
I
I
got
got
the merit badge. I check it off. I've graduated. I'm now titanium platinum status, and I don't have to remember how to do these simple things. And that, to me, that's another thing, talking about real life. Every time something goes wrong and I get mad, I realize it's my fault. In almost any case, it's almost always my fault. It's like Catholic guilt. It's always there, because you go back and you debrief and you realize, I had a coach, I didn't have a champion. I
Hmm.
I asked about budget, but I didn't really confirm that. All this stuff. When you miss a step, it always comes back, and um, it's one of those things where you're just constantly reopening the book and looking at these rules and these techniques fresh.
And again, imagine that there's a rule for that, and the rule is, and this is, I call this the cruelest of all Sandler rules. There's 249. This is the cruelest of all Sandler rules, and that is, there are no bad prospects, only bad salespeople.
Yes.
And so no matter what, if you get ghosted, what did I do to prevent myself from getting ghosted, as an example. So we've been in the situations enough that we know what to say and do to prevent some of the things. And if you're ghosted at some point, the best thing to do is, at some point, you're just going to have to walk away, follow the system, close the files,
Yeah.
move along. And if they come back, great. If they don't, they don't. But you can't do anything with somebody that really is not responding. So, again, there are no bad prospects, only bad salespeople. It puts the accountability back on us to learn a lesson that we can use in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm in the insurance space, and an underwriter at Swiss Re once told me, there are no bad risks, only bad premiums. You charge enough, it's a good
Yeah.
risk. But
Yeah.
you go
And
say,
you can
yeah,
apply that in so many places. There are no bad kids, only bad parents. I don't know, maybe that's not right, but, there are no bad trainers, there are no bad, students, there's only bad trainers.
yeah,
I mean, you just look for the situation where you substitute a word or 2, and it brings the accountability back to us,
well,
on our side.
yeah, and I think, when you talk about the genuine curiosity you need to have as a successful seller. Um, a lot of times, and we do this more when we're either young or new to the profession or new to the product. We rely on sort of the credentials to do the selling for us. Sort of the idea of, like, I'm going to run through all these things, um, that should impress you, so that once you're
Mhm.
impressed, you're simply going to agree to what I propose next. And I was mentoring. I'm unbelievably at the age where I now mentor younger salespeople. And I was talking with a young salesperson, and I said, just take it back to dating. And I said, you know, there are people with a resume that, if they relied on it, would just be profoundly obnoxious. And I have a buddy of mine I went to high school with, went off to Annapolis, became a Navy SEAL. He's got, you know, great relationships with his parents. He volunteers, whatever thing he does. But if he sat down at a first date and said, it's top of my class in Annapolis, I'm a Navy SEAL, I own my own business, I get along great with my parents, want to go to bed? You'd be like, what are you talking about? Like, what a lunatic. But, he's like, well, this is our founder and this is our funding and this is how much we raised and this is what our tech does. Can I send you a proposal? People are like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm not even sure I like you, let alone want to give you money. And we use those credentials as a crutch because we haven't yet dug into the details of what that person's problem is and really tried to understand, can we help them?
Yeah. Yeah, it's 100% true. And by the way, I've seen that a lot lately. People starting off decks with, here's our company, here's when it was founded. Our founder, Jeremiah, was in the covered wagon, went across the country. I mean, it's like, no one cares. No one cares, really. And so it's got to start with the focused on the other side. And I love the point about credentials, and people are looking to credential yourself. And yet really when you're the product, you don't need the credentials. And
how does the credential help the client? If you want to say, we've got 20 years in this particular technology and we built this thing along these particular lines, and the reason you care is because it will help you do X, Y, and Z, that's a worthwhile story. That's helping them understand that the thing that is a fact makes an impact on their life. Very few people bridge that gap. Most people leave it as, let me tell you these impressive facts and hope that you draw the appropriate conclusion that we are the right people to be doing business with. And they don't connect the dots. They don't do it. And so
they leave it to the certification or whatever it is to stand on its own. By the way, I can't let this moment go by.
All right. It's a safe space. Share.
It's a safe
Share
space.
How that makes you feel.
Yeah. So I have a personal trainer for many years. Her name is Linda. She's amazing. Just a wonderful human being. I have a photo of her she had just finished a competition, and she is, full on
ripped.
I mean, muscles full on, absolutely. And so she used to do personal training for people, and she was in a gym where she was doing personal training and the like. And in the back of the gym, there was an office, and there was a guy back there that was a nutrition coach. And here's Linda in the front, and she's always like working with people and talking with them and striking up conversations and trying to help. And sometimes she gets a client and all this stuff. And she'd occasionally give nutrition advice. The guy in the back, who's back in the office waiting for people to come in, he called her back there one day. He said, hey, look, you can't be giving people nutrition advice up there. That's what I'm back here for. And he looks at her and he goes, anyway, what are your credentials for nutrition? And she looked at him and she said, I'm wearing my credentials. And I'll never forget that, because it's like, it's so true. When you embody what you coach and profess, and that's part of what people are buying from you, is your ability to be consultative, your ability to ask questions, your ability to provide insight by what you think about and what you draw out of someone. That's being a product of the product. And anyway, I'm wearing my credentials.
May we all be so blessed as to have a mic drop moment like that. That's fun. That's fun.
That is indeed. So many things. We can start wrapping up a little bit here, Glenn, but so many things. I've, in terms of Sandler and its application, I know I've had many people say Sandler is great for dating, And, people get ghosted. That's the fourth step of the buyer's system right there. They mislead on the front end. That's never happened. All these things. I wish,
Either you use a system or the buyer uses a
that's
system, but some
exactly right.
system is being used.
One of my favorite Sandler tools, of course, is the let's pretend. And I've thought many times, I mean, wonderfully happily married for 32 years, whatever we are right now. But I remember I thought to myself at one time when I learned the let's pretend reverse, I thought, man, I could have used this in college and high school let's pretend I asked you out on a date. What would you say?
What would you
No?
say?
Well,
What would you
that's
say?
fine. I won't ask you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's such a protective kind of technique.
Well, I mean, and what's the other? I'll get the rule wrong, but essentially selling like you're financially independent and don't need the money. You know, is there anything worse than to be a 16-year-old guy who clearly wants some young lady to say yes, and she can see it coming from all the way down the hall by the locker, like, oh God, here
I'm
he
I'm
comes. Like
financially independent. I don't need the business.
I,
You know, that's the mindset that's
would have
going to
been useful
attract
for
people into your
16-year-old
life.
me. That's for sure. It's a mess.
Well, any other spots? I mean, there's so many places. I know Sandler. I've had 4 people tell me it saved their marriage, and that's not a joke. IR
That's good.
theory, self confidence. I mean, there's so many places. So it's so great to be able to see it out in the wild. So, any final thoughts?
I would just I would say that the reason this thing sustains is because it's based on the truth of human interactions, and that's why I keep coming back to it. But that's also why I think it's so effective.
Yeah.
And it the other thing we kind of talk about, in real life. Anybody who's listening to this, like I said earlier, folding socks, walking the dog, you're doing something really important, which is you are investing in your career, in your process. You're trying to
Mhm.
get better. A huge percentage of people can't even be bothered to listen to things that might help them get better. So you're already ahead of the game. So, give yourself a personal high five, whether it's light or dark outside. I'm generally walking the dog in the dark, but yeah, it's a constant process of relearning.
Yeah, by the way, I appreciate that. I think it's wildly true. It makes me chuckle sometimes when I hear people, "Yeah, I went through Sandler." I'm like, that's like saying, "Yeah, I went through meditation."
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
worked out once.
I worked out. Yeah, I've been through exercise. It's just because you just never stop getting better. You keep, forgetting things that used to work, and it's just nonstop
Well,
process.
and the
And
world changes around you too. I mean,
and then
how
there's
many of
that.
us sell nowadays in ways that 15, 10 years ago just you know, weren't even the way of the world. So
And
it's
and and thankfully in the world of Sandler, at least to me, and maybe this is self-promotion, but it or self-promoting of Sandler or whatever, but the behavioral side of Sandler, people are not acting differently today than they were by and large
no.
200, 300 years ago. There's stories of Columbus, going to get money to come over to America and free consulting that he did for, Spain and all this stuff. So, and this has been going on for forever. So the behavioral side has remained the same, which is great. The nice thing is that it always feels to me like we're always looking for the best practices on the technical side. Now that may change. Technology may change how
Mhm.
people sell and how they go through different channels. So we're always kind of shaping that side of things, but the behavioral side, it remains the same. And that's just a blessing all the way around. So,
Absolutely.
Glenn,
Absolutely.
so appreciate you, man. You're
Yeah,
a lot of
thank you.
fun to talk with. We'll do this again.
Hope so. That'd
And
be fun. See if I can
thanks
become
for
a two-time
thanks for being
guest.
a what's that?
I hope I can become a two-time guest.
Yes, I'm sure that will happen. And
Perhaps.
appreciate you being not just a client but also a friend and
Absolutely.
a great insightful partner. So,
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
indeed, we'll see you again soon. So, hey, I hope you've gotten a ton of value out of this episode. By far, it's our purpose to help people make money and have fun and have a good time. We're here to help improve your life, to help you make it easier to go sell or to manage your sales team, and ultimately to go build your own sales engine. Don't miss an episode. Best way to go do that is to make sure that you jump out to buildingyoursalesengine.com/follow, where you can link up to all of our latest episodes. For more information about this episode, go to buildingyoursalesengine.com, where you can download show notes, transcripts, and other information, including handouts, snapshots of this and other episodes. If you'd like to connect with us to talk about how we can help you build your sales engine, and you are either located in the state of Georgia or are referred to us by one of our clients or affiliated by one of our clients, please reach out to us at buildingyoursalesengine.com, where you can click there to book some time with us. We can find out how we can be of help with one another. If you're not in either of those two circumstances, please reach out to Sandler.com, where you can find a Sandler office near you. Be well.